You are worth $43.2 million, and the man who runs the dry cleaner down the street thinks you write technical manuals for commercial copy machines, something with the words system operator. Something he heard you say once, 4 years ago, and never bothered to update. You've brought him 7 jackets since then. You've never corrected him. This is not an accident. This is architecture. It starts the way most of these things do, with a single cash-flowing asset and a piece of advice you almost didn't take. You were 26, closing on a rundown self-serve car wash, $152,000, financed with a seller carry note because the owner's health was failing. The man at the local escrow office, an older guy named Miller, looked up from the deed and asked, "You putting this in your own name or did you set up an entity?" You didn't understand the question. Your own name is what makes you feel like a businessman when you tell your friends, he said, then leaned back and added, but if a hose line snaps off the swivel and cracks a customer's shoulder blade, they're going to sue you personally, not the concrete. You filed the LLC instead, $95 to the state. You didn't think about it again for 2 years. That's the whole beginning, Sam, not a 5-year master plan, just a passing comment from a tired escrow officer that planted a shield you wouldn't understand for another decade. By 31, you owned 5 car washes split across 3 separate LLCs because a commercial lawyer, Helena, hired for a zoning dispute, told you never to put more than 2 operations under one roof. If someone sues one location, she said, you don't want them reaching the others. She billed $325 an hour and was worth every dollar, though you didn't fully understand that until a customer slipped on soapy ice at your 3rd location and sued for $290,000. The suit named the single LLC attached to that lot. It never touched the other 4 locations, your house, or your personal name, which appeared nowhere in the paperwork except as the registered agent for service of process, a title that meant nothing to anyone reading the filing, and everything to you. By 35, the car washes had turned into something larger, not a business exactly, more a quiet ecosystem of paper. 5 LLCs became 12. 12 became a holding company owning pieces of all 12, so instead of managing a dozen sets of taxes and statements, you managed one, sitting quietly above the rest. Helena called this consolidating the canopy. You called it Thursday afternoons with a spreadsheet, moving numbers between accounts that had never carried your legal name. Somewhere in there, you stopped opening accounts yourself. Paul, your business banker, could set up an account for any new LLC without you walking through the door. A registered agent in New Mexico, $130 a year, never once spoken to on the phone, received your legal mail, so none of it landed on your kitchen counter. New Mexico doesn't require LLCs to disclose owners, neither does Wyoming. You picked New Mexico because it was cheap, and nobody made movies about it. By 39, there was a trust, no mahogany conference table, no dramatic reading, just a document Helena's firm drafted that owned the holding company, that owned the 12 LLCs, that owned the washes collecting quarters from customers who never needed your name to get their cars clean. It carried a name chosen because it wouldn't Google well, a string of random nouns that would never connect to your last name if someone typed it into a search bar at 2 in the morning. That's what people get wrong about privacy, Sam. They think it's one dramatic decision. It isn't. It's roughly 40 small, unglamorous choices made over a decade, together forming a wall nobody has a real reason or ability to see through. Sitting across from Helena with a full accounting laid out, she flipped through a folder covered in her own handwriting, 12 LLCs, 1 holding company, 1 trust, a bookkeeper, an accountant, none of them ever in the same room, all reporting to you through 1 monthly summary. She looked up and said, "On paper, you basically don't exist." She meant it the way an engineer admires a bridge, structurally, not emotionally. What she never did, in any of those meetings, was hand you a single consolidated total. Whether the New Mexico fee had been paid, whether the trust's filing had gone out, that was what she tracked. The structure was the asset. The money was just what it happened to be holding. There's a version of this story where you become someone else once the number gets large enough. You watched it happen to Garrett, a guy from your college dorm who sold a fitness franchise at 33 and spent 3 years making sure everyone within earshot found out. New truck, oversized wheels, a boat he mentioned 400 times more often than he used it. You ran into him at a reunion, wearing a jacket clearly picked to be noticed, talking loudly about a venture fund. A few people nearby nodded with the practiced patience people use when they suspect they're about to be asked for money. You wore a fleece vest bought on sale for $29 and drove a 2017 RAV4 with 104,000 miles, registered to one of the LLCs for a business use deduction. Someone asked what you did. Car washes, mostly, nothing exciting. True, and beside the point. Nobody asked you for money that night. Nobody's eyes did the quiet calculation people's eyes do when they think they've spotted a number worth chasing. You left at 8:30, stopped for gas, paid $44 with the debit card tied to your personal checking account, which held $5,800 at the time. You keep it thin on purpose. The real money doesn't sit anywhere you could reach it carelessly. Your brother Toby doesn't know any of this. He knows you do fine, and that you covered a transmission repair 3 years ago, $3,200, from an account he assumed was some savings buffer. He's a high school counselor, 36, recently divorced, raising his daughter on a schedule that leaves him running on fumes. 6 months ago, at 43, he called on a Sunday night. In the careful voice of someone who'd rehearsed it, he said he was about $19,000 behind, between a medical bill, a broken furnace, and a rent increase that came with barely any notice. You could have sent the full amount before the call ended and never felt it. The municipal bond ladder alone was throwing off roughly $225,000 a year by then, about $600 a day. $19,000 was a little over a month of that, sitting there whether you touched it or not. You didn't send it that night. Instead, you asked him to send every bill. You spent the next Saturday at his kitchen table, his kid doing homework in the next room, going through every line item the way Helena once went through your files. You found a billing code error worth $3,400 that the hospital reversed after one call, a utility discount program nobody had mentioned, and a local notice period rule that cut the rent increase down to something survivable. By the end, the real gap was closer to $7,000, covered from the personal account, framed as a loan you weren't planning to collect. You didn't tell him about the trust, the 12 LLCs, or the registered agent who has never once heard your voice. Some of that is protection. But if you're honest, some of it is closer to grief. The loneliness of sitting across a kitchen table from someone you love, watching them sweat over numbers that stopped being real to you years ago, knowing the kindest thing you can do is let the gap look smaller than it is. The structure got tested once, in a way that mattered. A former contractor, Vance, who'd done utility work on your second facility, became convinced, sincerely but wrongly, that he was owed a cut of everything that came after. He filed a lawsuit and named you personally. His lawyer, working on contingency, spent 4 months trying to trace a personal net worth back to your name. He found the house, modest, paid off, worth maybe $390,000. He found the RAV4, worth less than the tow truck that would move it. He found a checking account holding, at the time, $6,900. He did not find 12 LLCs. He had no legal path to connect to you, because the connecting document sat inside a trust filed in a state that doesn't require ownership disclosure, managed by a holding company whose only listed contact was a registered agent who has never once spoken to you on the phone. The suit settled for $18,000, because Vance's attorney realized there was nothing left to find. You paid it from the personal account, refilled that same month by a distribution scheduled since the start of the year. An ordinary transfer that would have landed whether Vance existed or not. Nobody at his firm knows, to this day, that the man they sued was worth roughly 100 times what they were trying to extract. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like a smoke detector, installed years earlier, going off during an actual fire, and doing exactly what it was built to do. Your 3-person team runs the same way the LLCs do. Each piece load-bearing, none holding the full picture. Paul the banker sees the accounts but not the trust. The attorney sees the trust but not the daily cash flow. The bookkeeper sees the cash flow but never learns what it adds up to. You're structurally the only person alive who's ever seen the whole shape of it at once. It costs roughly $51,000 a year in fees to stay invisible, steep, until you remember what the Vance case would have cost if he'd found anything. You think of it less as an expense than an insurance premium against a life you have no interest in living, where people know, and knowing changes how they treat you. The number finally lands on a Tuesday, at 44, in an email titled Q2 Consolidated Summary. You're standing in an auto parts store, holding a replacement brass nozzle because a facility manager texted a photo asking which part to grab. 14 quarters of these summaries have all looked the same. A spreadsheet, no exclamation points. This one's different. For the first time, Helena's firm has rolled every entity into a single figure instead of a dozen separate lines, because a refinancing next quarter requires one number instead of 12. The figure at the top says $43.2 million. You read it twice, the way you read something when part of you assumes you've misplaced a decimal. You'd known the pieces were growing. You'd never once seen them added up. A man near you in the aisle is comparing oil filters, unaware that 18 inches away stands someone whose holdings could buy the store, the strip mall it sits in, and a dozen more like it. The cashier who rings up your $8 nozzle doesn't know either. You drive home with the windows down because the RAV4's air conditioning has been rattling for 2 weeks, and you keep meaning to get it looked at. You thought, once, a number like this would feel like a rival, a version of you waiting on the other side who finally stopped being careful. Instead, sitting in your driveway with the engine off, what you feel has nothing to do with money and everything to do with the fact that the structure held, that nobody found you, that the maze worked exactly the way it was built to. Toby calls that evening to say his landlord backed off the rent increase completely. He's laughing, relieved, thanking you for the Saturday at his kitchen table. He has no idea what happened in an auto parts store 4 hours earlier. You tell him you're glad it worked out, and you mean it completely. The number sitting quietly in an account he'll never see doesn't come up, because it was never really the point of the call, and lately, you're less and less sure it was ever the point of anything at all. The nozzle gets replaced the next morning. It cost $8.30. The Vance lawsuit is 3 years behind you now, a settled matter in a cabinet you've never opened again. 12 LLCs keep collecting quarters from customers who will never know your name, and somewhere in a spreadsheet, a number keeps compounding quietly, without ceremony, for a person who, on paper, in the ways that matter most, has arranged to barely exist at all. 3 weeks later, you walk into the dry cleaners. The warm, heavy smell of steam and starch hits you as the bell on the door chimes. The owner, an older man with a pencil tucked behind his ear, slides 3 of your cotton shirts along the metal rack. He looks up, counts the hangers, and smiles. "Here you go, manual guy," he says, typing the total into his register. "Still keeping those copy machines running?" You reach for your wallet, slide your debit card through the terminal, and look out at the gray street. "Every single day," you say,